Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
The town clerk has informed me that a quorum is present. I hereby waive the requirement of return of service, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2024 Medfield Annual Town Meeting. Now, for those of you a bit confused, because you remember the town moderator being much taller, having a full head of hair, and a calm yet authoritative voice, that was Scott McDermott, who we thank for his service, and my name is Mike Pastori, the new town moderator. And now it is my honor, as is our custom at town meeting, to ask the veterans present to please stand and be recognized, or raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you all for your service. I would also like to ask anyone who is new to town meeting to please raise your hand or stand up. Great, welcome. Thank you. At this point, I would like to ask Scott McDermott to come to the stage for one more time to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Scott. If you could please remain standing for the national anthem. Annie Fredolillo, Medfield's own, I would like you to come up and please sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Annie. Also, according to town meeting custom, I will now read the names of Medfield volunteers that have passed away since last year's town meeting. Angelina Balcom, Clay Balcom, Herbert Burr, Beverly Campbell, Elizabeth Cullen, Patsy Dewar, Charles Fisher, Patricia Fiscaldo, Jack Garvey, Nancy Gerstle, Michael Harmon Sr., George Hinckley III, Diana Jones, Jack Kendrick, Jean Kingsbury, Mildred Neer, Thomas O'Neill, Lois Rankin, Kathleen Regan, Patricia Scarziotti Mahoney, Marguerite Schmidt, Marjorie Sloan, Arthur Pete Stagg, Richard Taylor, Margaret Warren. Please join me in honoring these and other town residents that have passed away over the last year with a brief moment of silence. Thank you. We also have a state elected official present, State Representative Marcus Vaughn. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize everyone on stage tonight. To my right, Town Clerk Marion Benaldi, Assistant to the Town Administrator Brittany Franklin, Assistant Town Administrator Frank Gervais, Jill Rafter, Emily McCabe, Brent Nelson, Peter Michelson, Deborah Cardiser, and Ed Vizella. It is one of my privileges as moderator to appoint new members to the Warrant Committee from time to time. It's something very near to me as a former Warrant Committee chair. Appreciate everything the Warrant Committee does. We do have open positions from time to time, and I would strongly encourage anyone interested to please approach me after town meeting, or you can email me at medfieldtownmoderator@medfield.net. The rules of order for tonight are printed in their entirety, starting in page 1 of the warrant report. I'll summarize some of the key rules now. The subject matter of town meeting is limited to the articles set forth in the warrant report. The only non-voters that are authorized to attend town meeting are invited guests, individuals providing technical or other support, Medfield students. Non-voters shall be seated in the designated area to my left. All town employees and individuals employed as consultants to the town be authorized to participate in town meeting as non-voters. No other non-voters authorized to participate. Participation in town meeting as a non-voter does not include the ability to make a motion or register a vote. The order of the articles will be determined by the moderator using the following general guideline. Articles in the consent agenda. Articles pertaining to personnel issues, which must be addressed by law before the operating budget. Then the operating budget, then remaining articles requiring a simple majority, and then articles requiring 2/3 or greater vote. I will recognize the warrant committee member for purposes of making the main motion on each article. Because each article has been recommended for passage by both the select board and the warrant committee, we will only have reports for certain articles, which will be given after the main motion. There will be no requirement of a second from the floor on main motions. As each article of the warrant is presented, the discussion and the vote are not on the article as printed in the warrant, but rather on the motion that is on the floor for consideration. Any voter wishing to speak to town meeting should go to one of the designated microphones. We have a new procedure this year. There are 3 microphones, one in the middle marked question in blue, to the left of me for supporters of the article marked yes in green, and to the right of me for opponents of the article marked no in red. If you wish to speak in an article, please go to the microphone that best approximates your purpose, and upon being recognized, identify yourself by name, street address, and position in town government, if any. To avoid confusion, I will allow only one motion to amend to be pending on the floor at any one time. Motions to amend should be made from the center, marked question. I'll be enforcing a 2-minute time limit on all speakers at the mic, which will be tracked by a digital clock in the view of the voters. There may be occasions where I allow a reasonable amount of additional time, depending on the circumstances. Every speaker must directly address the article at issue, speak through me as the moderator. Any comment about an individual, an article not currently under consideration, or any other topic not relevant to the article will result in redirection and may result in the speaker forfeiting any remaining time. It will be my practice to take voice votes. If I am in doubt as to the outcome of the voice vote, I'll ask for a show of hands. If still in doubt, a count by standing vote will be taken. Such a standing count shall be administered by Deputy Tom Marie, who I would like to publicly thank for not hanging up on me when I called him back into town service. If members of town meeting doubt the ruling of the moderator on a voice or hand vote, by state statute, any 7 voters may demand a standing vote be taken. Please, all cell phones should be on silent or off. And finally, we do not want anyone to get hung up on procedure tonight. So if you wish to make a motion or a point of order and don't know how to do it, just holler for my attention and we can figure out the appropriate point of order or the motion. With that, let us begin the legislative process with the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains a number of warrant articles to be acted upon collectively for the purpose of expediting the proceedings. For reference, please look to page 5 and 6 of the warrant report. I will read the title of the articles for inclusion on the 2024 consent agenda. As I read, if you would like further discussion on any of these articles, please signify by saying hold. If held, the subject article will be taken up individually. Article 1, Annual Town Reports. Article 2, Elected Officer Compensation. Article 5, Authorization for New Electric Vehicle Charging Station Fund. Article 7, Authorization for New Council on Aging Revolving Fund. Article 8, Appropriate Funds to Vaccine Revolving Fund. Article 10, Cemetery Perpetual Care Trust Fund. Article 11, Local PEG Access Appropriation. Article 12, Route 27 Dale Street Traffic Mitigation Fund. Article 15, Transfers to the Municipal Capital Stabilization Fund. Article 17, Appropriation to the Capital Stabilization Fund. Article 23, Rescind Bond Authorization for Mount Nebo Water Tower. Article 24, Appropriate Funds to the 375th Anniversary Fund. Article 25, Appropriate Funds to the Economic Vitality Fund. I will now offer a motion that Articles 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 15, 17, 23, and 24 and 25 be passed as printed in the warrant report. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I deem that the motion passes unanimously. We will now move to Article 3, Personnel Administration Plan. That can be found on page 24 of your warrant. Motion from Deb Cartisser of the Warrant Committee.
Move that Article 3 be passed as printed in the warrant report.
Any questions or comments on the article? Seeing none, this vote requires a simple majority to pass. We will vote on the motion offered. All in favor of Article 3, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Article 21. Article for the town's operating budget can be found on page 48 of your warrant report. Requires a simple majority. Beginning on page 49, I'm going to read each budget line item in order. If you would like further consideration on any line item, please yell hold. We will go back to that item after all articles are read. Workers' compensation insurance, health and life insurance, liability insurance, unemployment compensation, Medicare insurance, county retirement contribution, OPEB contribution, selectmen salaries, selectmen operations, town administrator salaries, town administrator operations, town accountant salaries, town accountant operations, assessor salaries, assessor's operations, treasurer collector salaries, treasurer collector operations, Town council operations. Human resources salaries, human resources operations. Information technology salaries, information technology operations. Town clerk and election registrar salaries, town clerk and election registrar operations. Conservation Commission salaries, Conservation Commission operations. Planning and zoning salaries, planning and zoning and appeals operations. Town public building and property maintenance salaries, town public building and property maintenance operations. Town report meeting salaries, town report meeting operations. Police operations salaries, police operations operations. Traffic markings, sign operations. Fire and rescue operations salaries, fire and rescue operations operations. Inspection salaries, inspections operations. Sealer salaries, sealer operations. Emergency management salaries, emergency management operations. Animal control salaries, animal control operations. Was that a hold? On animal control salaries? Okay. Tree care salaries, tree care operations. Highway salaries, highway operations. Snow and ice salaries, snow and ice operations. Street lighting operations. Equipment repair maintenance salaries, equipment repair maintenance operations. Sidewalks operations. Solid waste disposal salaries, solid waste disposal operations. Cemetery salaries, cemetery operations. Health salaries, health operations. Council on Aging personnel, Council on Aging operations. Veteran salaries, veterans operations. Outreach salaries, outreach operations. Library salaries, library operations. Park and recreation salaries, park and recreation operations. Historical Commission operations. Memorial Day, Veterans Day operations. Arts Cultural Council. Reserve Fund. Town debt principal, town debt interest. Regional vocational school operations. School personnel, school administration operations. Okay, now we will go back to the two line items held. First was police operations. Person who held that, please come up to the middle mic. Please identify
Hello,
yourself.
Mr. Moderator. Richard Judge, 8 Juniper Lane, Medfield, Massachusetts.
Yep.
Is there a question on timing? Here we go. My question is fairly simple. Does the new police motorcycle fall under this?
No, it's in the capital budget.
Capital budget, thank you. And I was impressed with the amount of new police vehicles out front, but it concerns me that they're jet black and that they have blacked out windows. I'm into community policing, and I'm concerned that the officers aren't getting enough community involvement in the town.
Mr. Judge, something I'm sure you can bring up to the chief, but not involving the budget. Thank you. Animal control salaries. Please identify yourself, name and address.
Hello, Mr. Moderator. David Combs, 428 Main Street. Misplaced hold, but mine was about the previous line item, not related, and I apologize, I missed it. Emergency management salaries. What is the nature of this line item?
The $4,000 is a stipend for the fire chief as the emergency management director.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments on, please? It's my height.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, Joe Hunt, 31 Cheney Pond Road. I just had a question as I was reviewing this article. So the warrant committee recommends number is ultimately what each line item would be funded with?
Correct.
So I guess the second question then is there's like 25 instances where the warrant committee is recommending more money than the department requested. And on an individual basis, it's not a whole lot, but in the aggregate, it's nearly $200,000 more. And I'm just kind of curious what the rationale is, why the warrant committee is allocating more than the respective the town department's requesting.
I can answer that. So a lot of times it's due to the cost of living. So when we originally set the cost of living, we don't put it in each individual budget until the end when everybody makes the final determination of what that cost of living will be. And this year that was 3%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments or questions on the budget? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for a motion from the warrant committee.
Move that the town appropriates $71,581,143 to the various department operating budgets to defray the operating expenses of the town for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2024, as set out in Article 21 of the warrant report under the column Fiscal Year 25 Warrant Committee recommends, and that to meet said appropriation, sums be raised on the fiscal year 2025 tax levy and transferred from other available funds totaling $3,617,370.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that majority vote, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. I will move on to Article 16, Capital Projects, Municipal Buildings, which can be found on page 41 of your warrant report. And I will ask Warrant Committee member Brent Nelson for a positive motion.
Move that the town appropriate $1,850,755 and transfer $1,776,147 from the Municipal Building Capital Stabilization Fund and $74,608 from unexpended prior year articles for projects and purposes as set out in the warrant report.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on this article?
Yes, Chris Potts, 7 Curve Street. I would like to amend this article to remove the Medfield High School additional money for court repairs at the cost of $125,000 and defer it to town meeting next year. The reason for this is that it came to my attention at the Capital Budget Committee meetings and also at the warrant hearing that pickleball court was going to be incorporated in this and that there has been no money allocated for sound mitigation. As you know, in a lot of communities, this has caused lawsuits, police calls, and a lot of problems. I don't believe the neighbors have been made aware that this is planned as part of the court repairs. And being a good neighbor, I think it's really important that the due diligence is done when a change of use is made for a court. I also just want to make sure to read. CNBC interviewed Bob Unick. He's a sound engineer and pickleball player. He's been studying this problem for the past 8 years. He consults.
Chris Potts, can we have the amendment first and then we can have discussion on the amendment? So Can you restate what the amendment is?
That we remove from Article 16 the $125,000 additional money for court repairs at Medfield High School.
And do we have a second? Okay, we do have a second. So the amendment on the floor is to remove $125,000. Say it one more time.
To remove $125,000 from the Medfield High School court repairs.
From Medfield High School court repairs.
The additional money.
Okay. So we will have discussion on the amendment on the floor, not on the main motion right now. And the amendment again is to remove $125,000 from the Medfield court repair. I would like to recognize the chair of the select board.
So I think it's important for everyone to think about what the requests came across. If you've had a chance to walk on the tennis courts right now, they're horrible. There are large gaps. At last year's town meeting, if I'm not mistaken, we approved $150,000. They realized it needed more. The courts are terrible, and it's fine. I happened to be over there yesterday afternoon watching kids try to play, and it was a joke. So to delay this another year I don't support that at all. I think it's very important that we move forward, we get these courts addressed. If pickleball is going to be in it, I think, Chris, you've heightened the awareness, but I don't want to see something like this delayed when the discussion can be had. But those courts absolutely need to be addressed, and to delay it another year for our high school students and for the tennis club. And I know there's interest in even getting a pickleball club, and if you pay attention to what's happening with that sport, it's exploding. And why not give our kids, our students here, a chance to get involved with the program and have the courts right here on the campus for them?
Okay, we have a question in the middle, Mike.
Renee Howley, 3 Harding Street. I guess I wanted a clarification. It just says court repairs. There are basketball and tennis courts over there. Is the money, like, it probably should specify which one it's for. And if it is tennis courts, I just wanted to comment that, yes, the children need those tennis courts. Our high school kids cannot play on their home courts, and that's not acceptable.
Thank you. I want, in 1 second, I'm just going to recognize Superintendent Marsden. Please come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What I have in my hand is the RFP that's going to be released if this is approved by town meeting. So the RFP that was drawn up by our building department has an add alternate section. So in that add alternate section, number 2 is pickleball, provide pricing to furnish and install pickleball line striping. There are to be 1 pickleball court at each tennis court with a total of 2. Alternate number 3 is sound barrier. Provide pricing to furnish and install sound barriers on 2 sides of the tennis court fencing. The sides will be those abutting the residential area. Provide a linear foot cost, assuming it's a 10-foot high fence. Material should be a Q-Defense or an equal product. So we have addressed that in the RFP if it is approved tonight at town meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Marsden.
I had a question about...
could you please state your name and address, please?
Mike Harold, 78 Harding Street. I had a question about the $200,000 for basketball court repairs at the public safety building. We're spending $350,000 on our basketball courts this year. Like, do we think that that's the right way to do it, or can you move the pickleball court from closer to the neighborhood over to the public safety building?
So the public safety building is for a full reclamation of that court. We had somebody out to look at it. We don't believe we can repair it. We may have to replace it. The reason why we're not moving the pickleball courts there is that's probably one of the very few courts that is not school-related. It's not actively programmed by adults, and it's pretty much full, morning, noon, and night with kids on the weekends, grown-ups. So we'd like to leave it as an all-sport basketball court. We're afraid if we move pickleball there, I know how much you love it, we're afraid if we move pickleball there, the kids will get moved out of that court.
Chris, please.
I want to make sure that I get my point across here. So Bob Unitic, he's a sound engineer and pickleball player. He's been studying this problem for the past 8 years. He consults with USA Pickleball, started a company called Pickleball Sound Mitigation to help communities with this growing problem of noise. He said pickleball paddles vibrate at a high pitch of 1,000 times per second, which is what leads to the pop noise. Humans are sensitive to pop sounds and often annoyed by them, he added. Quote, I appreciate the problem and frankly wouldn't want to live next door to numbers like 70 decibels over and over and over every 4 seconds for 8 hours a day, he said. And I'm sure you wouldn't either. So my big question is too, as good neighbors, don't we have an obligation to let the abutters know that this is coming so that they have an opportunity to also weigh in because none of the neighbors know that this was planned as part of the capital budget expenditure.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Okay, we have a question in the middle.
Yes, Catherine Herb Zuber, 52 Harding Street. It has to do with the courts, the tennis courts. I'm a tennis player and I'm a pickleball player. I wholeheartedly agree that the tennis courts should be repaired for the high school students. We have a team and they don't have their courts. I disagree with putting pickleball lines on tennis courts because I've played separately on pickleball courts, tennis courts, but once you put those lines on a tennis court, it just changes the dynamic of the game. So hopefully you can find someplace else to put the pickleball and not put it on the tennis courts, but repair the tennis courts.
Okay. Do we have any more comments on the amendment on the floor? On the amendment? Okay, please.
The courts, right? Yeah. Renee Schweikart, 1 Metacomet Street. I just wanted to question/comment also. There are many lawsuits right now pending within Needham, Falmouth, Wellesley, Braintree, and Provincetown about pickleball courts having been placed in towns without good, sound remediation. So it's just something for our town to think about before we start to initiate a pickleball court without proper understanding and having neighbors know about all of these conditions. So that's just.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more comments or questions on the amendment, we will have a vote on the amendment on the floor, which is to remove $125,000 from the Medfield court repair from the capital projects municipal buildings budget. Chris, did I have that correct? Did I have that amendment correct? Okay. And you're going to make the motion? Okay. So all in favor of the amendment on the floor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay. I cannot tell from the voice vote, so we are going to go to a show of hands. All in favor of the amendment on the floor, please raise your hand high so I can see it. Okay. Hands down. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, I deem that the amendment fails. We are going to go back to the main motion, which has already been read. Do we have any comments on the main motion? All right, seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. All in favor of the main motion for Article 16, Capital Projects, Municipal Buildings, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Article 18, capital budgets, non-building. Can be found on page 44 of your warrant report. I'll again recognize Warrant Committee member Brent Nelson for positive motion.
Move that $2,241,095 is appropriated to pay costs of funding the capital projects described in Article 18 and the recommended amounts as set out in the warrant report, including all costs incidental and related thereto, the quote, approved capital projects. That to meet this appropriation, the town shall fund each of said approved capital projects from the recommended source of funding identified in said Article 18, and that the Select Board is authorized to enter into any contracts and to take all actions necessary to carry out said approved capital projects.
Okay, thank you, Brent. This requires a simple majority. We'll vote on the motion offered. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Next article up, Article 22, FY25 Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund Budget. This can be found on page 53 of your warrant report. And once again, Brent Nelson for the positive motion.
Move that the town raise, appropriate, or transfer from available funds the sum of $3,341,950 for the Water Enterprise Fund and $2,371,766 for the Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the article? All right. Seeing none, this requires a simple majority to pass. Vote on the motion offered. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Article 26, pond surveys. It can be found on page 56 of your warrant report. Recognize Warrant Committee member Emily McCabe.
Move that the town vote to transfer $20,000 from certified free cash for the purposes set out in the warrant and requested by the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the article? This requires a simple majority. All in favor of the motion as offered, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Deem that the motion carries. Article 27, Medfield State Hospital Maintenance and Security, can be found on page 57 of the warrant. Recognize Warrant Committee member Peter Saladino.
Move that the town vote to transfer a sum of $50,000 from certified free cash for the purposes of maintenance and security at the former Medfield State Hospital.
Any questions or comments on the article?
I'll stand here instead of the no microphone, but
Actually, could
My
you
name-
please stand at the no? Thank you.
my name is Richard Judge, 8 Juniper Lane. I'm standing in front of the no microphone, if anybody's wondering. This $50,000 we're spending is to take care of the state hospital. I need to point out to everyone here that volunteers of this town are being shut out of a lot of opportunities, and I need the town to wake up to the fact that every volunteer that gets turned down from volunteering costs every one of you more in your tax bill. This $50,000 is a fine example of that. It's $50,000 being spent on the state hospital for maintenance and security. So now we have the town DPW sending a truck up with 2 guys to repair boards that were done, frankly, free of charge by the volunteers. We're having the police respond up there. I guess that's what means security. And this also was occupied by volunteers until the town felt that it needed to be a town-run and town-paid by its residents security force up there. So I wanted to point out that the volunteers in Medfield save residents on their tax bills, frankly, thousands of dollars. And they need to be honored by the town of Medfield, including the selectmen who are volunteers, but the warrant committee. There are a lot of people that are paid.
Judge, can I just ask you to please?
Sure.
wrap it up? Thank you.
There are a lot of people that are paid in Medfield, and there are a lot of people that volunteer. We need to honor the volunteers because it comes in the form of savings on every one of your tax bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments or questions on the article? Okay. Seeing none, this requires a simple majority to pass. We'll vote on the motion offered. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries by a majority. Article 9, Annual Revolving Fund Expenditure Limit Authorization, which can be found on page 35 of your warrant report. Recognize Warrant Committee member Deborah Cartiser.
Move that Article 9 be passed as written in the warrant.
Do we have any questions or comments in the article? Okay. This requires a simple majority. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Article 6, Authorization for New Parks and Recreation Revolving Fund, which can be found on page 32 of the warrant report. Recognize Warrant Committee member Jill Rafter, please.
Move to amend Code of the Town of Medfield, Chapter 117, as printed in the warrant.
Do we have any comments or questions? Okay, this requires a simple majority. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the motion carries. Article 13, establish a special education reserve fund, which can be found on page 38 of your warrant. I will recognize Ed Vizella for a motion and a report.
Move to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13E, and to transfer $200,000 from certified free cash and otherwise take the action set out in the warrant. The Warrant Committee report. Special education reserve funds were enabled through the 2016 Municipal Modernization Act and governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13E. This fund is established by town meeting, utilized in upcoming fiscal years to pay for unanticipated or unbudgeted costs of special education, out-of-district tuition, or transportation. Establishment of this fund is being proposed to address the increase in unpredictable nature of special education costs. A policy on the use of this fund will be incorporated into the town's financial policies. The district must first apply for extraordinary relief from the Special Education Circuit Breaker managed by the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE. If the circuit breaker funds are denied or otherwise made not available to the town of Medfield, the use of this fund can then be requested by the district, but can only be expended after a majority vote of the school committee and a majority vote of the select board. The warrant committee recommends a transfer from certified free cash in the amount of $200,000 for fiscal year 2025. In future years, the dedicated revenue source for this fund will be the annual Medicare reimbursements received by the district. The anticipated dedicated revenue will begin in fiscal year 2026. Per the statute, the balance of this fund cannot exceed 2% of the annual net school spending of the district. The treasurer-collector is authorized to invest the monies in the fund, with the interest earned becoming part of the fund. The warrant committee recommends passage.
Thank you, Ed. Do we have any comments or questions in the article? Luckily, the vote is on the motion on the floor, not on the slide. So, any comments or questions in the article? Okay, this requires a simple majority. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the article passes. Article 19, Elementary School Feasibility Study Funding, can be found on page 46 of the warrant report. Recognize Peter Michelson for a motion and a report.
Move that the town transfer the sum of $650,000 from certified free cash to be expended under the direction of the school building committee for paying the costs of a feasibility study for purposes as set out in the warrant. The report. The Medfield School Building Committee was reconstituted in early 2023 to study and evaluate options for the renovation and/or replacement of the current Dale Street School. To date, the town has appropriated $500,000 for the SBC to pay for the costs of a feasibility study, including but not limited to the various studies mentioned in the above article. While some of the prior feasibility study may be available to be reused, there will be changes to project costs, building design, and changes to space requirements, etc., necessitating a new feasibility study. The town, through the school committee and the select board, has again reapplied to the Massachusetts School Building Authority MSBA program, and we will learn in December 2024 whether the MSBA will invite Medfield into the MSBA program. If invited into the MSBA program, full funding for a feasibility study is required to be in place to move forward in the program. This appropriation, together with prior appropriations, will bring us closer to fully funding the estimated cost of a feasibility study. Warrant Committee recommends passage.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions in the article? Please.
Jerry Potts, 7 Kerr Street. I was just curious, of the money that's been already appropriated, how much has been spent and what has it been spent on?
So far, it's about $15,000. It was $14,000 on the feasibility study, the enrollment projection study, and then there were some handouts that we had at Medfield Day. But I would defer to the SBC for further than that.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mike Quinlan, 1 Stewart Street. As many of you know, I run MSBA projects in my professional life, and I just wanted to say in regards to this that that's not enough. 650 with the 500 is not enough to do a real feasibility study. I'd say it's at least $200,000 short from what we're seeing with the towns that we work with. And typically, the total feasibility study is $1.5 million. So I don't think that that is the end result, but I don't think we can amend this on the floor, correct?
can, but we then have to pull funding from somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
So not looking to shortchange
I kinda
where
like it the
else
way
you
it
have
is
money.
now.
So I just wanted to make sure people know that if we do get accepted in the MSBA program, that there's probably going to need to be some additional funds put into this to really do a proper feasibility study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinlan. I just want to remind everyone, I know it's a new procedure this year, but if you're against the article on the floor, no over there, yes over there, and the middle is for questions. Thank you, please.
Nice to see you. Carol Reed, 195 South Street. I haven't kept up on this, so I am in the question line. This money, is that necessary to move any of the school project forward? I haven't heard any progress. That doesn't, because of my status, I'm out of the loop, but I don't know where we are and if this is going to enable us to move forward. And second, is this feasibility study for a certain location?
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm going to ask Mike Weber, the chair of the SBC, to come up and address those, please.
Thank you.
Please.
May I make a point of personal privilege? Bob Allison, 120 Green Street. I understand that we need to amplify, but with 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of speakers and everything, the echo is really bad. Maybe just me, maybe others. I don't know if maybe you could just a little bit.
I've been told about my grating voice before, Bob, so I will try to speak a little lower. Mike?
Mike Weber, co-chair of the SBC. So just where we are today, and in regards to this bill, so no, the MSBA makes their decisions every December of who they elect to bring into their programs. As Mike Quinlan eloquently put, this will get us closer to the amount needed for a feasibility study. If Medfield does not get in again, then the town has a decision and our group has a decision, but we will need money regardless, in MSBA or without, to do a feasibility study. And that'll begin in fiscal year 25. So that's what this article is for, to get us going. Location is not decided. We have a handout that we'll give out after the town meeting tonight. That's outside. We'll give it to you. And then we have 3 or 4 public forums towards the end of May to talk about location. Love your input if you have any, so please come. Also, we have email addresses and Facebook and all that other stuff. You can reach out to us if you have comments, questions. We are meeting monthly, so please come to those as well. The more feedback, the better, and you're not the only one who doesn't really know what's going on right now. So,
thank you, Mike. Do you have a question of the mic?
I do have a question. Christian Donner, 92 Green Street. My question is, the last time we approved the feasibility study for a new school project here, I had the impression at the end it wasn't used to study feasibility. It was used to create a design for a very specific project, a very specific location, a single option, and we were then asked to vote for it, and it failed because a lot of people didn't like it. So my question is there something in the process today when we approve the 650 on top of the 500 that are already approved that will prevent that from happening again? Specifically, what will be the outcome of the feasibility study? What will we get for the $1,150,000?
Mike, can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So the feasibility itself, again, we've been talking about it in our meetings, but the feasibility study is a very long, drawn-out process in which you hire OPMs and architects. The location of the school, whether it be an ad reno or a new school, is still up in the air currently. So if you have input on that, we'd love to hear it. That said, we're looking at all options still. We're being as transparent as possible. If you're looking for, will this feasibility study get us a school that's going to pass? Only that next vote at town meeting or a special town meeting will get that answer. So I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Well, I'm looking for a process that considers input as you go along so that at the end, we can be certain that everybody or the majority supports it. Not like the last time we voted on the location, there was a preference vote,
Yeah,
right?
so-
Most people voted against the Dale Street location? Against the Wheelock location?
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Where the article at issue is being discussed, not
Correct.
not the special town meeting.
So,
Understand.
yeah, so we have the location of the school will be decided by the SBC. We have public forums, 4 of them in May.
Okay.
Please come, and we would love to hear your input.
So same repeat process, that's all.
No, that's not entirely true.
We have another question at the mic.
Thank you. Fred Davis, 82 Bridge Street. Maybe I'm missing something in this, but December 2024, MSBA will make a decision. We'll either be asking for us to be in or not, but we'll need funding then, and we're saying, it sounds like the amount we're voting on is not going to be enough. What am I missing?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Obviously, we only have so much money to, put into this, but the reality is we will have another town meeting, and all the $1.5 million-ish that we will need for a feasibility study won't be spent right away.
MSBA will be okay with that, is what you're saying?
It's really kind of the architect's decision of when you hire them, but yes, we will have to figure that out as a town, but yes. I mean, this gets us in the right spot. This gets us closer to the spot we need to be in.
MSBA won't close
MSBA
us out because we don't have enough.
Fred, that's correct. MSBA is not, they don't really look at this as far as, they don't look at the funding in place. That's the town's decision to get, that's the town responsibility to get funding in place for those things. Typically, feasibility studies are part of their program. Since we had a failed vote for a replacement of Dale Street, they will not fund it a second time. So they did fund it the first time.
Mike, thank you. I'm going to.
Thank you.
No, I think he answered it, so.
Okay. Do you have a question this time, Mr. Quinlan?
I just want to correct some of the information that was said about the MSBA process. The MSBA is not going to set our budget for us. So regardless of how much we vote, when we vote it, we do need to have funding in place to prove that we can do a feasibility study. The question is, what is the quality of that study? And also, what is the team we're going to be able to attract? If our budget is too low, as a town that recently voted against a school, the OPMs and the architects are not going to be too thrilled about coming after our project if they're thinking we're being shortchanged. It's because they're loss leaders. For us, I'm an OPM, these are loss leaders. So if they see a budget that's 1.1, that they're not going to chase that because they're going to lose even more money. So the reason I brought up the extra $200,000 is because if we do get accepted in the MSBA program, 1.1 might be enough to get us started. But if we really want to attract a team that will do a good job, we're going to need more than that because otherwise it's going to get shortchanged.
Thank you. Okay, any more comments or questions? Seeing none, we are going to move this to a vote. It's a simple majority. All in favor of Article 19, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I deem that the article passes by majority. Article 31, MBTA Community Zoning District, which can be found on page 61 of the warrant report. I'll recognize Warrant Committee Chair Steve Callahan for a positive motion and a report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move to amend Code of the Town of Medfield, Chapter 300, zoning as set out in the warrant. The Warrant Committee report. This article brings together the Town of Medfield into compliance with the MBTA community's multifamily zoning requirements of the Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A of the Zoning Act, and the accompanying guidance from Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The Town of Medfield, classified in the law as an MBTA adjacent community, is required to submit zoning in accordance with the law by December 31st, 2024. The Planning Board has engaged Innis Associates to work with the Planning Board and the Select Board to assist in the development of compliant zoning. The Planning Board and the Select Board have held numerous public meetings and hearings on the proposed zoning has been developed. The result is 3 zoning overlaid subdistricts that meet the MBTA compliance model for location, size, zoning parameters, and units to meet the requirements of the law. The Commonwealth has linked compliance with the law and eligibility for public funding. The non-financial considerations. The Warrant Committee agrees with the Planning Board and the Select Board that the proposed MBTA zoning district is the best solution to compliance because, one, it identifies already dense areas, including the largest sub-district of downtown. Two, there is no change in dimensional requirements, and so there is no incentive for large, denser developments. Three, our existing zoning in the proposed MBTA zoning sub-districts already exceeds what the state lawmakers are asking of us. The financial considerations. The Warrant Committee believes compliance with the law is very important to Medfield financially and its fiscal situation. The Medfield State Hospital project relies on public infrastructure grants estimated at $30 million for its success. Trinity has stated that this project will no longer be viable without the public-private partnership for infrastructure. The failure of the Trinity project to move forward means that the town, once again, assumes the $20 million liability for remediation of the buildings and will lose needed net new annual tax revenue estimated at approximately $500,000 to $675,000 annually. Non-compliance also puts the town at risk for other grant funds, estimated at $5 to $10 million annually, including planning, downtown initiatives, and pedestrian safety grants, as well as other discretionary state funding, which may include Green Communities Act funding. We encourage all residents, I won't read that, it's too late for that, but the Warrant Committee unanimously recommended passage.
Thank you, Steve. I will now recognize Jim Brand of the Planning Board for a report from the Planning Board.
Great, Mr. Moderator. We have an oral report and a presentation to do, and we have 3 members of the Planning Board here to be part of that conversation. Myself.
Sarah Lemke.
Seth Meehan.
So for Article 31, pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapters 40A, Section 5 as amended, the Medfield Planning Board held a public hearing on Monday, April 1st, to consider amending the Town of Medfield's zoning bylaw as set out in Article 31. The public hearing was duly posted and advertised in the Hometown Weekly on March 14th, 2024, and March 21st, 2024. Article 31 seeks to amend the zoning bylaws to comply with the new requirements of MGL, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, which requires towns like Medfield to allow for multifamily housing by right and at least 50 acres of town. On April 1st, 2024, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend passage of Article 31. We have a presentation.
Presentation, great. Can you hear me okay? Thanks to our new moderator for his service and for the opportunity to speak tonight. Article 31 proposes zoning changes so Medfield complies with the state's MBTA communities law. Rather than review the article itself, we want to demonstrate how it offers compliance while still retaining our town's character and existing zoning safeguards. We should clarify what the law is not. Despite the name MBTA law, compliance does not mean we get a T or bus, whether you want it or not. Also, compliance does not require the construction of a single new housing unit. The law requires only that our zoning meets certain standards. We'll get to those standards shortly, but we want you to know that it's not a housing mandate, and it's also not related to 40B affordable housing. And lastly, as the Warrant Committee's already mentioned, they cited our shared financial consequences of noncompliance, such as the loss of Trinity's portion of the state hospital project. But rather than focusing on the negatives of noncompliance with the state law, we want to accentuate the positives of our Article 31. This slide, which is the next one, shares the state's requirements of Medfield. It's not the right one. The state requires that we zone at least 50 acres to allow by right multifamily housing with an average minimum density of 15 units per acre. 50 acres and 15 units per acre are big numbers. At first, the solution seemed easy. It seemed like it was the state hospital. But the density there is only 9.25 units per acre. Selecting it would have led to excessively higher rates elsewhere to meet the town-wide average of 15. So here's how we approach the numbers for the state requirements. Our existing zoning bylaws control density through dimensional standards. They dictate, for example, how tall a new building can be, how close to the street it can be, and how much open space is required. These standards reflect our town's planning priorities. So our goal was to identify 50 acres with existing density that would require as little change as possible to these numbers and still comply with the state law. Our work with many of you led to 3 areas in Article 31, which are found on page 71 of the warrant. Next one. Each area is already dense, already built out, already has multifamily housing. So we'd like to go through each very briefly. Next one. The first is the Park, an apartment complex on West Street. The park's density is already close to the state's requirement. And built in 2014, it has significant barriers to redevelopment, such as geographic and parking constraints. The park is 9.2 acres. The second is the Maple and Pleasant area, which includes 2 developments, Old Village Square down Route 27, and then connecting across the railroad tracks to Medfield Gardens on Pleasant Street. Barriers to redevelopment here include how the existing units are owned. Maple and Pleasant provides another 13.8 acres, so we're halfway there. The third is part of our downtown core. It is 28.4 acres. This is the largest of the 3 because the state requires that we have at least one area of at least 25 acres. However, the density here greatly exceeds the state's requirements. Next one. In all, we identified 51.4 acres. Article 31 would zone these areas as a single overlay district. The base zoning would remain. The overlay would be a new but optional zoning layer. A property owner could decide to use the overlay or not. This feature is not new. Town meeting has approved multiple zoning overlay districts before. To comply with the state law, our next step was to test if our existing dimensional standards would change in these areas. In other words, just within the overlay, to get to the density of at least 16 units per acre, would we have to allow taller buildings that are closer to the street with less open space? Would any of these numbers change? And so our consultant, who is here tonight, she ran the models, and of our existing dimensional standards, Article 31 proposes that Medfield complies with the state law by changing nothing. The density of these 51.4 acres requires no dimensional changes for compliance. And these figures are on page 64 and 5 of the warrant. Meaning if a property owner chooses to opt into the overlay, they could not build anything that's not already allowed by our current dimensional requirements. New buildings could not get taller. They could not encroach into setbacks. Next one. One part of the permitting process would change. The state law requires that we allow a development by right rather than by a special permit. A special permit requires a discretionary review by the planning board and possible involvement by people on other boards, commissions, and departments with public hearings, public input, and peer review. With a by right designation, an application would still be subject to the same people in the same review process and would still have to meet the criteria for public safety, health, or general welfare. Therefore, Article 31 retains our existing dimensional standards. It retains our existing review processes. What's more, Article 31 introduces design guidelines to encourage any project to be in keeping with our town's look and feel. If you do not like this state law, you are not alone. But for Medfield, compliance matters. Non-compliance will deny us access to state grants critical to town operations. A state grant paid for the extensive consulting for this article, and state grants are necessary for Trinity State Hospital project. But there are positives of Article 31. It provides compliance with a state law that still retains our town's character. Getting to this article has been a 2-year process. The work has been significant, and there have been a massive amount of public input. We're grateful for that, and our work is better for that. For the planning board outside of the state hospital, public engagement on this topic has been higher than anything else in a decade. And we're proud of that work that we've done with you. And we unanimously recommended passage of Article 31 so that together we can get back to the planning priorities that you've identified for your town. We appreciate your help through this process and your attention tonight, and so thank you.
Thank you, Planning Board. Do we have any comments or questions on Article 31? We have a question in the middle.
Yeah, my name is Dave Pucci. I live at 38 Charlesdale Road. I'm a big fan of the MBTA Community Act. I think we're not going far enough, honestly. I was at one of the public sessions in which I voiced that already, the opinion there. But I'd like to try to figure out whether I should vote for this or not. I'm not a big fan of where the existing zones are located. I'd rather see more development on the south side of town, nearer to the Walpole T station and the rest. So it's very simple. Are those 3 zones where they are? It's going to be it if I vote for yes tonight, and it'll never change? Or can I still hope that you'll make new zones in the future?
I think related to this article, I mean, these are the zones that are in the article, and at this point, with the planning board recommendations, they're pretty set with the article. But zoning can change in the future, right? If there are different conditions that happen, whether some of the other towns are successful in whatever pursuits they have with changing the law, or the state does change the law, we can change our zoning to react to that. So zoning is not permanent. It's just like we're doing here tonight. It can be changed in the future.
Thank you. I'm gonna
Can I add just one comment, Mr.
Sure,
Moderator?
absolutely.
Sorry. Just a note on the zones that were chosen as well. The planning board did receive a number of public comments about the areas, and the rationale for choosing the ones that were chosen were those are areas where there is already a significant amount of high density. So the impact to the town was felt to be less to choose areas that are already largely in excess of what would be required, as opposed to areas on the south side of town near Walpole, which were considered by the board, but ultimately deemed at this time a little bit more impactful to the town if multifamily high-density uses ended up there. So again, to Chair Brand's point, something we could certainly revisit, but at this time we felt that it was the least impactful to the town for housing to be put in those areas where infrastructure and services already exist.
Thank you, Sarah. We will, one more question, and then we'll go to the yes mic.
Yeah, Greg Kenny, 21 Maple Street. I live in Old Village Square. I guess it's really a question. I understand that this does meet, I guess, the definition of the requirements the state has set out. But is there any risk when the state figures out that we really don't have any intent of meeting the real, the issue here, which is to build additional housing, including affordable? Is there going to be a risk that all of a sudden they can mandate and change what can be done? Because again, I live in Old Village Square, and I got to tell you, I never saw it as a multifamily development. It's a luxury townhome development, and there's nothing affordable about it.
I'm going to recognize Gus Murphy, Select Board.
I'd like to respond to that. I have a different perspective on the issue of using these zoning areas. The issue around the state, whether it's the 40B or now the MBTA communities law, is an issue. It's legal for the state to grab local authority and pull it to the state and then attempt to tell the towns what they need to do. But if you think about what this town has done, and I'm tipping my hat to the planning board and planning board members that came even before the ones that are here right now, this town has tried to address issues of housing. And so it's easy to find places that are not going to have a big impact on us because we have zones that already are relatively high density. I'm not sure that they all were high density by right, so this law may change that. But the town has been trying to address our housing needs in a way that makes sense, in a way that preserves the character of the town. And with this law, which has high stakes because of the impact it could potentially have on our ability to carry out the redevelopment of the state hospital, the planning board has found a way to do that in a way that doesn't turn the town upside down, doesn't have major impacts on other people. in other areas by radical changes in their zoning. From my perspective, in the case of Old Village Square and Medfield Gardens, I kind of like the fact that the people who live there who would be affected, they won't be affected by the zoning, probably because you're already densely zoned. It allows the people who are there to be have a measure of control over what, it isn't just going to happen because a new zoning law came in, whether you like it or not, we're going to jam it down your throat. You have control. So my point mainly is I would not assume that the state is saying you have to go find 50 plus acres brand new because we want you to add 50 acres to what you've already done. To your point of where is this going to go, I think you may be right. Within 10 years, the state could discover that many towns and cities have figured out ways to absorb this zoning, to digest it in a way that doesn't have the impact that the state would like it to have. And you know what will happen then? The state will pass another law with a different set of rules that we'll be forced to comply with. I'm not a big overachiever anymore. After 40B, where if the state hospital is redeveloped, we won't be at 10% 40B, we'll be at 17%. But the MBTA law says, well, we don't really want you to do that anymore. We want you to do something different. Go run to the other corner of the ring. I don't think we want to overachieve on this stuff because it keeps the flexibility we need going forward in anticipation that if this works for the state and 40B worked for the state will have another law in another 10 years that'll tell us we have to do something else.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the yes mic now, and I will say to the speakers of the yes mic, you don't have to take the full 2 minutes since we only have yes speakers right now, so please.
Thank you. My name is Tom Dixon. I live at 31 Maple Lane in Medfield. I'm also in the overlay district known as Old Village Square. And I would commend the planning board on the layout of this very complex issue. Even within my own area, there's quite a bit of dialogue about what it means. And so I think the job has been thorough. And for me, with a disciplined review of the warrant, the plan in town, and having asked for further guidance from the town planner, I strongly urge a strong yes vote. I think the financial considerations have been laid bare. The loss of the catastrophic redevelopment of the state hospital, and including the large leap in cultural support that has provided us over the last several years, would be a real loss to the community. So I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jean Mineo, 3 Alder Road, and I also have the honor of serving as the executive director of the Belle Forge Art Center up at the State Hospital. And I think the planning board's done a fabulous job in selecting the zones for this overlay district. I think the only arguments I've heard against it at some of the public meetings have been fear of the high density development. And to that, I just want to remind people that the only other proposal we had to redevelop the state hospital was for 702 housing units, more than double Trinity's proposal of 334 within the existing buildings. So if you're concerned about high density development, please vote yes.
Mr. Donner?
Christian Donner, 92 Green Street. I just wanted to make a quick point. This is not a great law. I personally think it tries to stab at traffic and housing issues and link them together without really having a comprehensive plan for how people get there from Medfield to the Walpole train station, where they park, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not voting on the law, right? We're voting on what's good for Medfield tonight. I believe the planning board did an outstanding job, and I will vote yes for it. Thank you.
Hi, Doug Lawrence, 5 Lowell Mason Road. I just wanted to quickly share my perspective. I'm an associate member on the planning board, which means I wasn't elected, nor do I have a vote. But I did have the opportunity to participate in all the meetings, all the community meetings, all the planning board meetings. I also work for a planning and design firm professionally. So I think one of the things we heard over and over again was creating a zoning overlay that would protect the character of the town. And I just wanted to kind of reinforce Seth's point about, nothing is changing around the characteristics of development in terms of height, setback, open space. And so I think we can feel really comfortable that we've come up with a really good solution to this that's going to protect the kind of character of the town if housing does come forward as part of this. So I just wanted to share my perspective and enthusiastically support the plan, so thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be the final comment on the yes mic. Briefly, please.
Dick Judge, 8 Juniper. Fully support this plan. The main reason I came here tonight wondering how we are going to fulfill the obligations the state is asking for us. What a great presentation that we've pretty much already fulfilled the obligations that they're asking for. We are probably one of the few towns that you'll hear in the news that has done that. You'll hear about other towns that are suing the MBTA and doing this and doing that. That's because they didn't take this issue seriously years ago the way the town of Medfield has. And so compliments to the whole town for supporting the issue of housing and moving in enough properties that are good looking, that keep with the character of the town and increase our property values, frankly, just because of the way we have gone about accepting and implementing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one comment with no mic.
Actually, I'm not a no, but I thought questions right out, but questions sometimes arise when comments are made. So
State your name
I
and
am
address.
Justin Ziegler at 31 Vinebrook Road. Hi, everyone. But this is actually a question, and it's not because I'm voting no, but I thought the questions were out. It strikes me that, and I appreciate the planning work on this and the commentary, Gus, great explanation of all these things and how it would work out in our favor in the future, but there's a lot of emphasis put on the Hospital Hill project here. And my only question is, if we go forward with a yes on this, which I'm inclined to do, is there some framework where Trinity still pulls out? Because with where interest rates have gone, a lot of these development projects aren't going through because it's become cost prohibitive for the private side of the public-private partnership. So broadly speaking, is there a limitation on what they can do if we vote yes? And if we vote yes and change the future composition of our development here in our zoning, and they pull out, have we kind of, for lack of a better term, mortgaged our future for something that doesn't come to be?
Planning board, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so I think the question, although I had a little hard time hearing, was if the state hospital development falls through, where does that leave us with this article?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so, the state hospital actually is something the planning board debated whether we should even bring up, because from our perspective, and this also goes to a question that was raised before, we achieve compliance with the state law by passing the zoning tonight, whether or not a single unit of housing is ever built. The planning board supports the state hospital development for other reasons. It helps us get to our 40B requirements. The planning board spent an extended period of time reviewing that as the site plan approval authority and think that's a really important project for the town, but it is ultimately not related to Article 31 and whether we believe it should be passed. So if the state hospital were not to move forward, the town would still be in compliance with the state law by having adopted this ordinance tonight, and we would be open to applications for multifamily housing at the requisite density in the districts that we've provided for, subject to the bulk and dimensional controls that we already have in place, and also subject to all of the site plan approval, conservation commission, building commission reviews that we would have today.
So just to be clear, though, that if this, it's basically strongly recommended that we do this because this is the only way that Hospital Hill goes forward, but I'm worried that there's a lot implied in that statement that's in the warrant and the report, everything like that. And if it doesn't go through, then are these new zoned areas prime target number one for high-density development?
Well, I think there's a couple of questions embedded in there that aren't all planning board jurisdiction. So I'll give an answer for us, and then I can have others on the podium maybe speak to the other issues. But the planning board does believe that this is good planning. we chose the areas in town that we felt were appropriate for high-density development should it arrive. And the reasons we think these areas are appropriate are because of the infrastructure that's already there, and as I mentioned before, because of the density that's already there, so it will fit in better. But ultimately, whether a project is developed has to do as much with whether it's permitted by right, which is what we're doing here, as it does with the height you can fit, the setbacks on the lot, the number of lots that are consolidated, whether there's town water and sewer. There are many factors that will influence whether these sites ultimately are developed outside of whether or not the state hospital comes. There may be that what's there is already more dense than what you could put here, and there will be no financial incentive for a developer to tear down what's there and put something less dense back. In the case of two of the districts, or at least one of the districts, Medfield Gardens and Old Village Square, the condominium form of ownership will make it very hard for someone to assemble all of the units to get control of the open space. So there are other barriers to redevelopment rather than just the market conditions, which will be impacted by the state hospital.
And one last question, and I'll be out.
Quick.
Would this have come about if Hospital Hill was not in the picture? Would we be doing this?
That has nothing to do with the article at question. You're asking for a hypothetical article. I'm going to have to ask you to sit down, Mr. Stiegler. Okay. This is a majority vote. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem it carries majority vote. Okay. Article 29, dog control bylaw, expanded dog leash. Before we get there, I am informed that we are joined by Representative Denise Garlick, who many of you might know has decided not to seek re-election after a long distinguished career at the State House. We thank her for her many years of service to Medfield. Thank you, Rep. Garlick. Okay, now, Article 29, dog control bylaw, expanded dog leash requirement, exception for off-leash areas. Page 58 in the warrant report. We are going to recognize warrant committee member Emily McCabe for a positive motion and a report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move to amend Code of the Town of Medfield, Chapter 100, Animals, as set out in the warrant. The warrant committee, by a vote of 7 in favor and 2 opposed, voted to recommend approval of the Select Board and Dog Control Bylaw Committee article to amend the existing dog control bylaw. The Select Board appointed a Dog Control Bylaw Committee in the fall of 2022. The committee developed recommendations and presented the recommendations at a public hearing in September 2023. The Select Board have accepted the recommendations of the committee and are proposing to change the current dog control bylaw. The warrant article proposes that every dog be on a leash or restraint no more than 7 feet in length. It removes the phrase, quote, or is attended by a person able to properly control its actions, which has been commonly referred to as voice control. The proposed bylaw will also introduce a limit of 5 dogs that can be walked at a time. Anyone wishing to take their dog off leash would be able to do so in Select Board designated areas, which they will control. At this time, the off-leash areas proposed include behind Wheelock, the North Field at the Medfield State Hospital, and the areas across from the hospital referred to as the Sledding Hill area. The Select Board will review the off-leash locations periodically throughout the year. The proposed changes to the dog control bylaw do not address all of the issues that have been identified from the work of the Dog Bylaw Control Committee. The Warrant Committee believes that this is a good first step in addressing the bylaw and looks forward to reviewing future recommendations of the Dog Control Bylaw Committee.
Thank you. Now we have a minority report. Jillian Rafter.
Thank you. The minority expressed concern that the article is overly broad in its approach and consideration is needed to focus on specific areas of concern throughout the town. The minority expressed a belief that it should only focus on the specific problem areas, such as the state hospital. While the minority believes the article and the work of the committee is commendable and their efforts greatly appreciated for the concerns of the citizens in town, the proposed changes ultimately end up painting a broad brush of change to the entire town rather than addressing key areas of concern. The minority would recommend the committee take a more surgical approach to correcting the wording in the bylaw for major areas of concern that would also allow for the enablement of more effective enforcement.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question at the middle mic.
Thank you. Elizabeth Witcher, 69 Indian Hill. A couple questions. If this proposed bylaw amendment were approved tonight, when does it go into effect?
Immediate.
Mark?
There's a 90-day period on local bylaws for the Attorney General's office to approve it, so it would become effective upon approval by the Attorney General. In this case, it would be then prospective from that date, since there's no way that it would be applicable retroactive.
Okay, thank you. And will these off-leash designated areas be actually designated and posted by that date? Is there a timeline for when these areas will actually be effective?
Chair Murphy?
Yes. And if I can add to that, there are 2 areas in town where we've actually posted where dogs must be on leash. And the challenge that we're facing is the current bylaw, by the way it's written today, means that you can have your dog off leash, technically on the rail trail or on the quad at the state hospital, 2 areas that we know people should be able to walk, whether you're 2, 22, or 82, and not have to worry about a dog coming out to you. So this minor change to the bylaw would say that you cannot have voice control in areas where we want to make sure that dogs are on leash. It is not a drastic change when you think of what we're trying to do. Now, there's other elements in terms of the leash and number of dogs, but if you think about what's happening here, today, somebody walking down the street with their dog off leash on a public road, so I live on Metacomet, right on the sidewalk. If a dog goes up on my property, runs through my flower bed, in theory, they're not doing anything wrong, because then the owner can say, hey, little Petey, come back. That should not be allowed. We should have it such that if you have your dog on a public road, public way, that you should have your dog on leash and under control. There have been too many people. The reason this even came up, I've been on the board now for 2 years, there are so many inquiries about injuries, fear, people's properties being trespassed, that is the reason why we put the Dog Control Bylaw Committee together. I know Neil is over here at the Yes podium. He's filling in for the chair tonight. She was away for a family commitment. It was a very well put together committee, and I don't want to speak on Neil's behalf. I want to make sure Neil gets a chance to introduce the committee and their intent.
I'm sorry, Chairwoman Murphy. My question was, when is the timeline for when these off-leash? I understand that there are currently on-leash areas posted. My question is, when will the off-leash areas be approved and posted, and will that coincide with the effective period of this amendment if it is approved? That was my question.
So to follow up on what Mark said, if it's 90 days, we'll officially post it on the website in 90 days. I can tell you today that people do walk on the back fields of Wheelock with their dogs off leash. People walk on the backside of the state hospital. They walk across the street from the state hospital. So we know those are areas today that people are doing it. There are other areas in town that I know people don't like to talk about. They have like their own little private niche. So as more inquiries come forward to the select board, we can address it, but we know coming out of the gate where people are walking, and then where people are walking where we want to make sure the dogs are on leash so people are not injured.
Another question from Mike? Thank you.
Can you introduce Mike if you wouldn't mind?
Well, as you can see, I'm small. I'm Abby Marble, 16 Pheasant Road. Thanks, Dick. I would like to make a motion to amend the article from 5 dogs to 3 dogs. Because anyone walking 5 dogs, they're either, an angel, or they are a professional dog walker. And I'd like the town and the residents to be able to enjoy these places and not be accosted by sometimes 5 dogs.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to change the number 5 dogs. So
Down.
Maximum number of dogs per walker is
Would be down to
3
3.
dogs.
Because I don't know if you've ever been anywhere where.
We'll have discussion on it.
Thank
but
you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor to amend the motion from dogs per walker is 5 to dogs per walker is 3. Do we have discussion on the amendment? You get second. Thank you. It's a little awkward because you were yes for the motion, but I will,
Yes.
I'll
Yes
go
for the
over to
motion.
you for, please identify yourself.
Neil Downing from 81 Adams.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I served as secretary to the Volunteer Dog Control Council. We had looked at what the previous committee had done. We had talked with the animal control officer and the chief of police. We looked at what the surrounding towns had done. We met with the city of Newton, which had dog parks. We considered dog parks. The thing that really stood out to us was this leash law did not give our animal control folks the tools they needed when you had a problem situation. The other thing I wanted to say was we had a balanced committee of a vet. We had people on the committee that did not own dogs. We had people on the committee that owned dogs and walked them regularly in various areas of the town. So it was a balanced committee that took a look at a lot of different issues over 12 months in a public hearing. And this recommendation was what we thought was the best recommendation.
Neil, do you have a comment on the amendment to change from 5 to 3?
I would be okay with the 3. I think we have some very conscientious dog walkers in town that can control 5 dogs. I think we have some that are less so, but I would support the amendment for 3.
Okay. Is the question on the amendment?
No.
Okay. Do you have a comment on the amendment? Yes. Please.
So the state law has always been 8, and Medfield wants to do 5, but now it's a 3. But as one of the town's main off-leash walkers, I was wondering why we keep going down and down, because in town for many years we've been told to train our dogs with electronic collars, to buzz them or shock them, and it's posted right when you walk into the Medfield State Hospital, right from the parking lot, e-collars or on leash, and we can't even train the dogs now. If we are on a 7-foot leash, you can't even train off leash because you're supposed to do a 20-foot leash recall with an e-collar to get them to come back to you. Okay. And that takes multiple days of doing that. And if we're gonna get fined or something for trying to train the dog to be able to go to an off-leash area, so it's actually able to come back, how are we supposed to keep doing that if it's gone?
Okay. And this was my fault, but can you state your name for the record and address?
Patrick McGon, 79 South Street.
Thank you. Okay. Is your comment on the amendment?
Yes.
Please.
Hello. Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. My name is Don Scarry. I live at 16 Flintlock Lane, and I just appreciate everybody here. Give yourselves a hand at this hot event.
Please just
So,
speak.
anyways, I volunteer up at the buildings, the hospital buildings. I'm on the pooper control. My dog's nickname is Pooper, and my name is Scooper. So I volunteer because I just want to give something back to the town. I don't charge anything. I'm not looking for anything. But I can attest to the fact that the professional dog walkers, all of them that I've seen are They control their dogs really well. I guess I like the idea of a surgical approach versus a broad approach that just covers everything. And I don't think any neighbor should have to put up with a dog going through their garden or anything like that either. So maybe I prefer if we just thought about this a little bit more before changing the rules, because everyone up at the buildings knows each other. We've been going up there for, a long, long time. And I thought originally they put up a sign that said, dogs must be on a leash. And I said, they're taking away our freedoms. But it really helped out because we get people from out of town with fighting dogs that just used to let them off the leash and, attack other dogs. But the way it is now is people that come from out of town see the sign, they get their dog on the leash. People that have been there for a long time respect each other, and it's a good way to solve something that you don't have to have a lot of regulations for. So.
Do you have a comment on the amendment change?
For the 3 to 5 dogs, I think more than 5 dogs is fine, especially up at the buildings in the back. I don't know about on a neighborhood street though. So.
Is your comment on the amendment? No. Comment on the amendment? Fine.
Deb Lawrence, 24 Hartford Street. I walk my dog at Medfield State. I have one dog, by the way. I walk him at Medfield State Hospital almost every day. And there are interesting dynamics up there in terms of what I'm hearing people talk about. The dog walkers, they're bad, their dogs are fighting. It's not true. I would say 95% of the dog walkers who are there are incredibly conscientious about their animals that they walk.
Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I would say 5 is where we should be. I think 3 is too few. I think 5 is too few. But I think that my one suggestion is maybe that the dog officer or the animal control person could spend some time not looking like she's an officer, but watching what goes on up there and seeing what she thinks. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to vote on the amendment on the floor, which is to change dogs per walker is 5 to dogs per walker is 3. All in favor of amending the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, I cannot tell from a voice vote, so also this is a majority vote threshold. We will take a show of hands. All in favor of amending from 5 to 3, please raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? Okay, I deem that the amendment fails, and we will go back to the motion on the floor. I will go to the center mic.
I am a professional dog walker here in town, and I do take up...
Can you state your name?
Oh, sure. Melissa Roeder, 4 Elm Street.
And is it a question or?
It's a question for the committee.
Okay.
So I am a professional dog walker, and I take an average of 8 dogs on a daily basis today at 7 and 2 different walks. I'm curious about where you came up with 5, because I know you're a committee member. Frank does 5 on leash. He walks around the hospital at a very slow pace with dogs on leash. You had stated in 2 of your meetings that you were coming up with a survey. There were 1,600 registered dogs as of 7/18/23. Where's your survey? That was in your meeting minutes, and I would like to know where the meeting minutes are for 9/20 public forum, 10/16, 12/5. There was no meeting February or January, and the select board meeting that you had on the 21st, also no meeting minutes. Where are those?
Ms. Roeder, so is that a process question for the committee?
Yes, because I can't see what was discussed in their actual meetings, because no meetings were, so I'm wondering.
There's a motion on the floor, so I just have to ask you to keep your comments to the motion on the floor.
Okay, so I'm just wondering where you came up with the 5.
Public website?
But it's not, your meeting minutes aren't there, so I can't read them.
Neil, you can address the.
As far as I know, the meeting minutes are on the public website.
They're not.
But I believe the question was, why 5? How did you get to the number 5?
Where did you get to 5?
I don't recall where the conversation. Go ahead.
Mark Farrell, Expo Road. I'm also a member of the committee. Prior to getting the public feedback on the September 20th, we did not have a number or a limit. I think you may have all seen videos of one person controlling 15 dogs on or off leash well, so it can be done. But also, you've all seen that one person with the one dog who can't control that dog. So a number can be hit or miss. Now, when we had the September 20th meeting, which I believe is on video, that was loud and clear feedback from the town that they wanted a limit. And yes, we can discuss 3, 5, 6, 12, but they wanted a limit. What we were thinking was someone may have 3 dogs and take 2 of their neighbor's dogs, and that was 5. That's where it came from. There's no magic or science behind it. I would have been fine at 3, 6. It's just we were requested to have a limit, and that's what we chose.
Ask you to
So-
finish up your comment, please.
I do have a comment. So every single professional dog walker that walks in this town, that lives in this town, their business will suffer, except for Frank's, because again, he does 5. I don't know if you're aware in the state of Massachusetts, but that's government overreach. And if I can prove that my business is hurt because of your law, your 5, I can turn around and sue the school for my lost wages. The town. I wouldn't do that, but you should know that. You should also know that in the state of Massachusetts, you can have 8 dogs off leash if you pay a $100 fee. And then you have the dog walking insurance and the things. That was never discussed. So I think that this needs to be brought into further and not passed tonight, and keep having these conversations. And I invite anybody to come out and walk with me. Select board members, come on out and walk and give us dog walkers an actual chance to see what we can do.
Okay. Next question at the mic. Thank you, Ms.
Michael Taylor at 243 North Street. I'm also a member of the Norfolk Hunt Club, and this is probably a question for Mark Sorrell. So does this, do the changes of this bylaw, would that prohibit the Board of Selectmen from allowing the Norfolk Hunt? Right now, you give them special permit to go through, and it basically says, no dog shall be permitted in any public place, which would be, or street, which would basically, the Norfolk Hunt Club would have to cross public places and streets. So does the Board of Selectmen still have the authority to give the Norfolk Hunt Club special permit to allow them to have, say, the Thanksgiving hunt?
Mark?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know that was within the purview of the committee. That being said, the focus is on public land, and my understanding is that the Hunt Club largely rides on private land.
You know,
So
up
this-
at
so
the
this-
hospital, go ahead.
This does not apply to your own private land or to the private land of others where you have permission.
But up at the hospital, they have field A1, A2, and the Hunt Club definitely crosses it. It crosses the, it definitely is public land. I just wanted to know, does the Norfolk Hunt Club, can they still have hunts up at Medfield State Hospital with, of course, proper Board of Selectmen approval?
Gus.
I'll speak as a single member of the Select Board. Norfolk Hunt Club will not have to worry about that at all. That's not what this is targeting. If we have a legal deficiency, you'll have my full support to get that fixed. If there's anything that happens on this, for what you do, it absolutely should have no impact whatsoever. And if there's something about the way that we've done this, I'll be the first one to be lobbying for getting it corrected.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to go to the yes
I'm going
mic.
to say something, I know that's not popular, but I'm going to say this, because we've been getting emails, phone calls, nonstop. The Medfield State Hospital, I know this is going to be a popular statement, but I'm going to say it. It's not a dog park, right? When the town bought the land, they bought the land so that... And so people should, we've had so many people pull us aside and say, I don't walk at the state hospital anymore. It's a beautiful piece of property, but you know what? It's being overrun by dogs. And I have a dog, right? And I know that there is certainly a concern, and we should be able to have places in town where a dog has to be on leash. And I'm going to say another thing that I've said this in a couple of the forums. This is a bylaw that's really targeting probably 2%. 98% of the dog owners, the dog walkers, are being respectful. But when you have the people that don't want to be respectful and they ruin it for the rest, you get to the point where now you have to at least look at how do you manage this. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I know I have my little white dog. I walk over to the high school. not every night, but frequently. I walk at the state hospital. If there is no one around and I'm going through the parking lot, my little dog is not a runner, he's not a barker, he's not gonna chase a kid on a bike, and it's the equivalent to me of everyone that came to this meeting tonight who either used Pound Street or South Street, and there are posted 30-mile-per-hour limits. I'm pretty certain most people probably did 35 or 30, 33, maybe 37. You didn't get a ticket. You're driving down South Street, you're driving down Pound Street, and you're doing 47, you're gonna get a ticket. I don't want to speak on your behalf there, Chief, but that's what we're trying to go after, is the people that have no regard and are not putting our citizens' safety first. So please take that into consideration when you go to vote and you think about what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve the ability for people to walk wherever they want to walk in this town and know that if there's a nuisance dog, and they exist, and that's unfortunate, but they do, we need to have some ability for our dog officer and our police officers to pull someone aside and say, time out, your dog needs to be on a leash. Voice recall is not an option. So please take that into consideration. That is our biggest concern tonight, to address all of the concerns we've heard about people just wanting to feel safe. Not everybody loves a dog. I get it. And that's what we need to be thinking of when you're out walking your dog and you come upon someone. They shouldn't have to be fearful.
Okay. We're going to go to the yes mic, and then I'll go to you with the no mic.
My name's Andy Costello, 84 Bridge Street. I don't walk at the hospital anymore. I've been charged by dogs. People have been knocked over. Older women have been knocked over. I can't walk anywhere. Don't forget, Medfield State Hospital is not the only place people walk dogs. I can't walk at trustees' properties anymore without dogs charging us. And I just want to remind people that walking your dog on a public place is a privilege, not a right.
At the no mic, please.
Thank you. Again, Elizabeth Witcher, 69 Indian Hill. So what I'm hearing is in 90 or so days, there's going to be a fairly drastic change to, in fact, the privilege completely goes away, that we've enjoyed, that the people of Medfield have enjoyed for years, which is the ability to walk a dog off leash. What I haven't heard and what I don't see in the proposed bylaw is any language that actually sets forth a timeline for the select board to designate off-leash properties. And technically, if the select board doesn't designate such a space, it's not in violation of the bylaw. The only way that this bylaw were made fair is if it provided that it only goes into effect once there are designated off-leash properties in the town of Medfield. Otherwise, you're taking away a right and you're not really committing to give anything back to the people who have been enjoying that right.
I'm going to give you a reason why we didn't do that. By the way, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we put it in the bylaw and something happens where we want to change a place, we have to go back, vote. It becomes very tedious. Right now, it gives the select board the flexibility. If there's development going on, if there's an opportunity that presents itself, we can on a Tuesday night put it on the agenda. And anyone doesn't pay attention to how the select board is. Select board agenda is there. Our info packets are all there in the link. You can come to Christina or Brittany and get yourself on the agenda if you have any questions about the dog, the off-leash, on-leash area. But if we put it in, it's extremely difficult to change it, and that's what we're not looking to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I will say one other thing, if you don't mind. The one thing the Dog Control Bylaw Committee was extremely adamant about, we're not trying to run out here tonight and start jamming people. They're one thing, and I applaud Mark and Neil and the committee. It's all about communication, right? All we need to do is talk with one another. Start to communicate where dogs can and cannot be. And start to talk. We have a lot of people that come to the state hospital that don't live in Medfield, right? And that's part of the problem, that we're not talking to them tonight, we're only talking to you. So you will see more communication. If this gets passed tonight, what we're trying to do. What we're not trying to do is suddenly run out and just start giving violations. That's not the intent of this.
We're going to have another comment at the yes mic. We'll go to the no, and then
Bob Allison, 120 Green Street. I think the important thing to remember here is that the Dog Committee and the Warrant Committee have already said this has not addressed every issue. It's not, and we may think that if we do this, this is final, we can't do anything else, but that's not true. Why don't we just vote this in? It's a good thing to do to start, and if it doesn't work, we could always come back next week. Let's just do it.
We're going to finish up in the no mic, and then we'll finish up with the questions, please.
Kirsten Debate, 65 South Street. I am a dog walker. I have concerns about the prior comment just made for the very same reason. There seem to be a lot of questions. There's not a lot of time. I feel sometimes dogs on leash, I know for certain time, dogs on leash are more aggressive than dogs off leash. When two people with one dog drop the leash, sometimes the problem resolves. In some ways, I think the leash law, I hate to see the man who has one beautiful lab walking it down the sidewalk, holding a bag in its mouth that I know is really well behaved, and that being illegal now in Medfield. So while I also, as a dog walker, understand sometimes there are real problems, personally, most of the issues I've seen have been from non-Medfield residents, not Melissa, not myself, not Patrick. So I just want to say no for caution and for clarity before we pass this law. Thank you.
Last comment at the no mic, and then we'll take care of the questions with the people already standing.
Yes, John Bauer, 8 Forest Street, and I actually just want to address something you just said, Select Member Murphy. The way you said you would go about changing off-leash areas makes it seem like you could just pick and choose whenever you want to change it right away, and that's the one thing I have concern about. That is, we vote yes here, then it goes to the process that we're talking about there, where the committee down the road can just say, now it's no area whatsoever except for this tiny little field that will be a dog park. And my experience is that dog parks are actually way more horrific than, you know, having an area that's quite open, has trails, and can actually disperse dogs a little bit better amongst themselves. So that's my only concern. If that can be addressed, the rest I think makes sense. I have been to the state hospital. I'm a dog owner. There are dogs that are a big problem there. And I think that's a good area for the town for everybody to be able to go to freely and walk around. But I do think that we should have areas in this town where you can take your dog for a walk off leash, on trails, wherever else. And if anybody else comes to that area, they're coming knowing that this is an off dog leash area and that they're taking that into consideration when they choose to go there. That's all.
Thank you. Chair Murphy, briefly respond.
Well, so I think what you bring up is very valid, and I think in the spirit of what we're doing here, we're not looking to strong-arm anybody. I mean, I think the select board has proven that our ears are open, so I welcome people to come. Now we have this out on the table we can put this discussion on agendas. And I'll tell you, the Dog Control Bylaw Committee has a lot of other ideas coming forward. And if you're curious as to what other towns do, look up Newton. They have a medallion program where I have a dog, I spend my $10, I think that's what I'm giving you, Marion, right, for my license. But there can be a medallion program that says, okay, if you now want to walk in these areas, now you can pay a certain fee, and if you don't live in Medfield, you'll pay a higher fee. But now we can start bringing revenue in so we can have dedicated people help with our areas. So that we want to have more areas, not fewer. This is a very, there are a lot of dogs in this town. Right? And so we take that to heart. So please know the intent is not to do any strong arm.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, 1 minute each for questions, and then we're going to move to a vote.
Melissa Roeder, 4 Elm Street. I would like to move to amend it from 5 dogs to 8 dogs, so that way it does not hurt anybody else's business in town.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to amend from per walker is 5 to per walker is 8. Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor of amending the motion to change from dog per walker is 5 to dog per walker is 8, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Can we have a show of hands? All in favor of the amendment? Okay, hands down, please. All opposed to the amendment? Okay, since it is a majority vote, I deem that the motion does not carry. 2 more questions.
I would like to pick up where Mike Taylor left it off. I believe we have to amend the article if we want to approve it today with an exemption for the hounds of the Norfolk Hunt Club. And I'm proposing that we do that. if it's being, approved as it is written here, then they're not allowed. They cannot engage in their activities anymore. So can we put at the beginning, prior to Article 105, can we put language that says, the following 105, following Articles 105, 5A, 5B, that hounds of the Norfolk Hunt, while under the control of, a hunt master, are exempt from these restrictions.
Christian, can I help you out for a second?
Selectman Murphy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, let me, first off, as it stands, part of me says it would be good if we could get the bylaw changed and head this in the right direction, and I would hope that the members of the Norfolk Hunt Club would hear what I said, and I suspect would hear something similar to my fellow select board members, that would be something we wouldn't, that's not why we're doing this. But if we were going to amend it, I would not call out a single organization to be exempt. I would exempt any organized activities formally brought before the town that might involve dogs. And where I'm thinking, I'm not even sure if they're still active up at the hospital. I haven't seen them in a long time, but
They are. Does the hunt apply for permits before they can go up, before they can do the hunt?
But beyond the roof, I'm trying to think of the dog group. The Viswiz, there, that's the one I don't know if they're even still doing anything, but I know several years ago, they had organized events that they got together, and they also did a heck of a lot of cleanup up there. Probably they get tired of doing that. So my only point is, if we were going to amend it, I would suggest it be an amendment to exempt organized events that are brought to the town's attention and approved. And then it's not just the Norfolk Hunt Club. If there's some other organization that's doing something, we can make that exempt.
Mr. Donner?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My question in return is this an onus on the hunt club to get approval every time they want to take the hounds out? Because we don't want that.
As a practical matter, they do.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
they always tell us, because they want to put the signs up and they want to get the word out.
All right, then can we change my motion to exclude, as you...
excluding organized events brought before the town for approval.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I do a proposed amendment, which is pretty simple?
No.
Proposed amendment?
Hold on, are
No,
you
I can't.
amending the amendment?
Well, I haven't made it yet.
Okay.
We're working on it.
We have an amendment on the floor. Do you want to
Oh,
change do you want to change
Well,
the...
I was still working on the wording of it, but I will withdraw
Okay.
what I've said so far.
All right,
yes.
if you have better wording, please.
This is just better. This was not my idea, but at the end of, it says, this prohibition shall not apply to posted off-leash areas that are listed in the town's website or by special permit by the Board of Selectmen. That would do it. So that would apply to any organization. It's the Vishlas.
Okay. Hold on, please. Can you state the language one more time for the amendment on the floor?
So it says, right now, it says, this prohibition shall not apply to posted off-leash areas that are listed on the town's website or by special permit by the Board of Selectmen.
Select board.
Okay.
By the select.
Okay. So the
Well,
amendment...
we haven't voted on that yet.
Thank you. The amendment on the floor is to add after are listed in the town's website, the words "or by special permit by the select board." All in favor of the amendment? Thank you. All in favor of the amendment? Aye. Opposed? I deem that the amendment carries. We have one final question on the motion on the floor, which is now amended with that new language.
Justin Ziegler, 31 Vinebrook Road. I have no dog in this fight, but I have one question on enforceability and whether, and this is out of pure ignorance, have you ever thought about just raising the cost of a fine? Because is that in your purview? Because when something costs someone a lot of money, they'll think twice about taking that dog off a leash. And I really appreciate all the work because I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
So the line I used a lot, and the dog control bylaw committee certainly has heard me say this enough, It's a crawl, walk, run. Tonight is a baby step, right? I can guarantee you, if it's not next town meeting, it's the next one. We will hear more regulations and more things we're trying to do to evolve this program. But tonight is a baby step.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a majority vote, and the motion is now amended to say, or by special permit by the select board. So on the motion as amended, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I would like to see a show of hands, please. All in favor? Okay, hands down. All opposed? Okay. I deem that the motion carries by a majority vote, as amended. Okay, we are out of the majority threshold. We are at the supermajority and more. We are moving on to Article 20, which is prior year bills, which can be found on page 47 of your warrant. I will recognize Warrant Committee Member Peter Saladino for a positive motion.
Move that the town appropriate the sum of $12,075.66 from fiscal year 2024 available funds for the purpose of paying prior year bills incurred in fiscal year 2023.
Do we have any comment or question? Seeing none, I will move to a vote. It has to be a 4/5 majority. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I move that the motion carries. Article 4, dissolve opioid settlement stabilization fund, which can be found on page 31 of your warrant. I'll acknowledge Warrant Committee Member Jill Rafter with positive motion.
Move that the town vote to dissolve the opioid settlement stabilization fund created by Article 6 of the 2023 Annual Town Meeting.
Do we have any comments or questions? Okay, this is a 2/3 majority. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? I deem that the article carries. Article 32, enforcement of zoning bylaw violation by non-criminal disposition. This will be found on page 73 of your warrant. Peter Michelson for a positive motion, and then I'll go to Jim Brand for a planning board report.
Move to amend Code of the Town of Medfield, Chapter 300 zoning as set out in the warrant.
Jim?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I have the same oral report for 32 and 33. Can I read them together?
Please.
Pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, as amended, the Medfield Planning Board held a public hearing on Monday, April 22nd, 2024, to consider amending the Town of Medfield zoning bylaws as set out in Articles 32 and 33. The public hearing was duly posted and advertised in the Hometown Weekly on April 4th, 2024, and April 11th, 2024. Article 32 seeks to amend the non-criminal disposition of enforcement of zoning bylaws to be consistent with MGL Chapter 40, Section 21D, resulting in an enforceable fine structure. Article 33 seeks to substitute the words select men and select man to select board and select board member throughout the zoning bylaws. On April 22nd, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend passage on both Articles 32 and 33.
Okay, thank you. So Jim just read the report for both 32 and 33, but the current motion is just on Article 32. And this is a 2/3 majority. All in favor of Article 32, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that Article 32 passes. Article 33, substitution of select board and select board member in the town bylaws, which can be found on page 74 of your warrant report. Recognize Warrant Committee Member Deborah Cardiser for a positive motion.
Move to amend the Code of the Town of Medfield Division 1 bylaws as set out in the warrant.
Thank you. And the report was already read by Mr. Brand. This requires a 2/3 majority. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that it carries by a 2/3 majority. Article 28, Town Charter Amendment, moderator term. This can be found on page 57 of your warrant report. And I would like to acknowledge Warrant Committee member Ed Vizella for a positive motion.
Move that Article 28 be passed as set out in the warrant.
Do we have any comment or question? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 majority vote. All in favor of Article 28, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Oh, that's disappointing. Moving on to Article 14, to establish an elementary school tax mitigation stabilization fund. That can be found on page 39 of your warrant report. And I would like to recognize Warrant Committee Chair Steve Callahan for a positive motion and a report.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to create an elementary school tax mitigation stabilization fund under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, and vote to transfer the sum of $900,000 from certified free cash into said fund. Warrant Committee report. The approval of a debt exclusion for a new elementary school has been a core part of the town's capital project strategy for over a decade. In fact, it's been the town's largest capital project need for a long time. The Select Board, the School Committee, and the School Building Committee have stated their support for an elementary school building project and for the need to find ways to reduce the financial burden on residents. Currently, there are no specific stabilization fund or reserve funds dedicated or identified for the elementary school project. The development of a funding plan and support by the School Building Committee and Select Board is a critical next step in building community support for a new school. The Select Board supports proactive fiscal planning and is serious about reducing the financial burden on residents. The town has the opportunity now to establish this fund and continue to identify future transfers from free cash into this new fund beginning in FY 2025. The goal of this fund is to identify an additional $4 to $5 million of future tax relief to be utilized during the first 3 fiscal years after the debt issuance for the school project. The Select Board will identify additional sources of funding, including the proceeds from existing and future land sales. The Warrant Committee and the Select Board recommend a transfer of $900,000 from certified free cash into this new dedicated tax mitigation fund.
Thank you. Is there any comment or question on the article? Okay, this requires a 2/3 majority vote. All in favor of Article 14, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I deem that the article passes by 2/3. Article 30, authorize disposition of town-owned land, Hinckley North. That can be found on page 60 of your warrant report. I recognize Ed Vizella with a positive motion.
Move that the Select Board be authorized to dispose of town-owned land shown as Parcel B, Hinckley North, as set out in the warrant.
Selectman Murphy, do you want to be heard?
I want to just go through a little bit of the history of this article, and I think I can own up to possibly being the main instigator in getting this article put on the warrant in the first place. The Hinckley property was bought in 2000 after approval at the special town meeting. Purchase price was about $1.1 million, and the intention was to buy that, at the time at least. Mike Sullivan's view was that we could buy that property, and he anticipated that there was a good chance that the Olsons, who live on Harding Street, would have been willing, when they were ready to move out of their house, would have been willing to offer the town an attractive price to buy that property. And the concept was the Olson property could be connected to the Hinckley property, and that property could be used for the construction of senior housing. Now, recognize in 2000, there was no 40B. There were a lot of the projects that we have going on now weren't even a glimmer in anybody's eyes. As it turned out, the Olsons were not interested in selling other than at market rates, which was their right. The other thing that happened is the Hinckley property itself was determined to have basically water protection areas kind of that split the property. So as a result, what we did was we sold Hinckley South to Bob Borelli for the project that's going in right now on Ice House Road. He bought it for $750,000. Now, there was a further adjustment when the COA provided additional land, that then there was more money that went to the COA garage, but that's separate from the sale. So if you look at the $1.1 million purchase that we made, we've recovered $750,000 on that purchase. Hinckley North has developable land on it. It's not for sure how big it is or how many houses it would support. And as a separate parcel, it has a small strip of land that runs down between two pieces of property, 84 Harding Street being one of them, that's about 40 feet wide. That is insufficient to put in a marketable house that's just out on the market. However, it's adequate for what we'll call Dover Amendment uses, where the town, for town purposes, could develop housing up there, say affordable housing, or do other things with that property and put in an access road in between those two pieces of property. And I've had a couple of discussions with the owner of that property that's affected by the easement on that property, and recognize the owner would really rather not, in fact, both owners now would probably really rather not have the town do that. When the Olson property sold, the current developer who bought it, planned to develop that property by renovating the Olson's house and building a second house. But as a practical matter, with that property, the Garrison Path project being put in place, there is no access to the town's property on Hinckley North from anything other than that one little strip of land between those two house lots. As a result of that, we've had some preliminary discussions with the developer to see about the feasibility of getting an easement from the Garrison Path Road that would provide direct access to that land that would also allow it to be commercially developed. And basically, the intention here would be to continue to pursue that easement so that we would be able to basically have commercial development. Now, why do we want that? Because as we just talked about in that last article, we're looking for ways to raise money that can go into the school mitigation fund, and this would be one of the ways we could do it, is to recover money there and put it into that fund. So that's the purpose. There's some signs up that are in opposition to that. I'm not really sure that that's necessarily a good idea, but that's up to the proponents of the opposition to make their own case. But basically, if we are not able to dispose of that property by selling it to someone to put something in up there, then we'll be left with property that will be available for town purposes, but that will be dependent upon that. Well, I won't even say that. We can still pursue the easement. Maybe we can do it in a way that won't be dependent on that strip that goes out to Harding Street, but we can't guarantee that. To be clear, the land was bought for municipal purposes. This is not conservation land, and as a practical matter, if this is basically locked up by private property, what you're being asked to take a look at is what to do with 5 acres of wooded property that's sort of in the middle of a donut that a few abutters will be able to enjoy and the town won't get any economic benefit from. Under the circumstances, we think it would be a good idea to allow us to dispose of the property, recognizing that the select board will definitely use judgment in what it does. It's not just a matter of throwing it out there for the highest bidder and whatever they want to do with it.
Thank you, Selectman Murby. We have no microphone, please.
Thanks. So first, I'd like to make an amendment. Oh, sorry, Mike Harold, 78 Harding Street. First, I'd like to propose an amendment for air conditioning for this room for this meeting. Any opposition? No, all joking aside, my name is Mike Harold. I live at 78. I'm an abutter to the property. I've lived there for a couple months, but this is the 3rd house that I've owned in Medfield. We live in Medfield for many reasons. One of them is our desire to live in an area with open space, trees, wildlife, a place with real natural beauty. I think the town's proposal to sell the Hinckley North property to a developer for development is myopic and undervalues the property by only thinking of its value in financial terms. The property's value is not just the amount someone will pay to build a single house. The value is what the trees, the wetlands, and the wildlife do for our town. The woodlands capture and store carbon, filter air, cool the environment in the summers. 50 mature trees can produce 5 tons of oxygen and store 2 tons of carbon. There's way more than 50 trees that would have to be destroyed on that property to do any kind of development. The wetlands, which make up more than half of the Hinckley North property, store carbon, which helps combat climate change, filter pollutants, and reduce the frequency and intensity of floods. The property is teeming with wildlife of all types. This property is part of what makes Medfield a desirable place to live. Bulldozing it to maximize the near-term financial impact to the town is not something that I can support and not something that I think the town really wants. I've spent some time online talking about the challenges of developing this property and why the cost of those challenges would likely result in the town receiving very little money from the sale. Any sale would likely be substantially lower than what Hinckley South lot was sold for. That lot was mostly flat, had utilities including sewer nearby, and had easy vehicular access. That is not the case for Hinckley North. Currently, there is not a great way to access the core part of Hinckley North without destroying hundreds of trees and taking land from residents of the town. Much of the property is...
Mike, can I just ask you to finish up, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, just lost my spot. Much of the property is wetlands or wetland buffer zones. If you exclude the wetlands and wetland buffer zones, Hinckley North is only 1.5 acres. From the wetland buffer to the property line, my property line, ranges from less than 100 feet at the narrowest and about 150 feet at the widest. Over the span of that distance, the elevation changes 30 vertical feet. So you have a near 30% grade on the property. Blasting the ledge and bringing in large amounts of fill and clearing the property is not what this town needs.
Mike, I'm
As
going
was
to have
said
to
previously
finish
by a
up.
member of the planning board regarding a different article, we need to retain the character of our town and preserve our open space. This is one way to do that. My family is asking you to vote no on Article 30 to protect our environment, retain the character of the town, and protect open space.
Thank you, Mike. We have a question in the middle, Mike.
Yeah, so just John Bauer, 8 Forest Street. Quick question. I thought you answered it at first, but then it made me think of something. So it's not conservation land today, but is there a way to deem it as conservation land? Because we got ourselves in the bind with the school location conversation a couple of years ago about conservation land. So would this actually help free up some land to prevent that type of situation for the future school project?
Selectman Murphy?
So the short answer from a timing standpoint is that's not an issue that's on the table at this year's annual meeting. But the town can certainly make a case to put any land it would like in conservation land, and that would basically take it off the table. If I could, I want to partially respond to the prior point, though. There's a couple points. One is that there's no reason why the owners can't choose to buy that land and turn it into whatever they'd like. So that's one piece. They'd have to buy it. Two, I would challenge the idea that the land is not worth very much. Right now, 1.5 acres in Medfield probably is worth something that you can build on, is worth somewhere between $400,000 to $600,000. Whether that land is worth $400,000 to $600,000 to anybody, I don't know, but I wouldn't want people to be left with the impression that it's pretty much useless land, that we can't get anything for it. This is serious money we could get at a time when we are going to be facing a very large school project where that money could help.
We've a comment at the no mic. Please.
Joanne Ward Fitzgerald, 4 Clayton. I heard once that you can summarize a lot in one sentence, so I have a quick run-on sentence. 1, everybody agrees there's way too much building going on in Medfield. 2, once you build, you can't unbuild. 3, there's no place for the rabbits to run anymore.
Thank you. Okay. Please.
Russell Morris, 84 Harding Street. I do beg to differ on the amount of money that could be gotten from Hinckley North. It is a very small actual buildable lot. As was mentioned before, when you look at 30, 40 feet of slope down, all the blasting and the wetlands, it's a very small lot. Based off the amount of money.
Can you just speak a little closer to the mic?
Based off the amount of money that was gotten for Hinckley South, I don't feel like the benefit financially to town for Hinckley North is going to outweigh the negatives. The current access is 17 feet between our 2 driveways. close to the Hospital Road turn, which is already a dangerous area, and of course, the extra 20 feet of easement on my property, which would go through my driveway, to get to that one single-family home that I feel like is the only thing that could be built there. So please vote no. Thank you.
Okay, next, please. And please step up to the mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and
My
clear.
name is Paul Hinckley. I'm the one that sold the property. I had a deal with Mike Sullivan and them up at the town hall. And when it came up in the town meeting to buy it, John Harney was here, and he got up and he said, listen, if you don't buy that property, there's gonna be 100 houses built there. And they said, oh. So they bargained with me, and I'll tell you, I don't know where they're getting the wetland and all that. I've been there all my life. I've been in town 90 years. Not 90, 80. But it feels like 90. But half these people don't even realize that that was Harding, Mass, and it had its own zip code, which is 03201 instead of 2, because the post office had more people up at that end of the town. But when I bargained for the property, had nothing to do with Olson's property, didn't even come up, or anybody else's. I had 13 acres. 3 of them were up by the house, and the other 10 were in the back. Those back was an all field. And the state paid that field for 20 years. Every year. It wasn't wet, it wasn't this. Now the property over where Pete lives,
Mr. Hinckley, I'm gonna have to ask you to finish up.
it was right there. That's where some of the water came from. But when the town bought it, now all the brush grew up there and got high. So when it rained, it couldn't evaporate. So then the deer and all them lived there. But the deal I had with them is the town was to buy this post office, which they were gonna move it back 20 yards because there's a 20-foot right of way going down.
Mr. Hinckley, you want to vote no, correct?
Huh?
You want us to vote no?
I want to definitely no, because the town backed out on their deal. It was supposed to be municipal or for the seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley.
Once it's gone forever. You're designated hard
Okay.
at
Next
mass.
speaker at the mic. Thank you, Mr. Hinckley.
That'll work. Christian down on 92 Green Street again. I have 2 things. One is deep concern about traffic on that stretch of the road. As you know, I've looked at, for the rail trail, pedestrian crossing at the bottom at Harding Street. I've looked at it extensively. We know cars are flying into the 25-mile-per-hour speed zone from both directions. Sight line, sight distance are non-existent because you come around the corner from Hospital Road. Any kind of volume traffic that would be coming out of that driveway, I think is a very bad idea. My second point is, should this article fail to pass today, and the town is looking for an entity to hold a conservation restriction on this property, I would like to volunteer the services of the Upper Charles Conservation Land Trust. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have 2 more comments at the no mic, and then we're going to move to a vote. Please.
Thank you. Cliff Fitzgerald, 4 Clayton Street. If there was ever a piece of land that shouldn't be developed, this is it. I mean, the hundreds of trees that would have to be taken out. It's on a steep hill. There's ledge that has to be blasted. When they put in the development up the street, Chapel Hill Landing, they blasted and we had broken windows. And that was 1/3 of a mile away. This is only 100 feet away, and it's in the backyard of multiple houses on Harding Street, on Hospital Road, and on Clayton Street. So this is a bad idea.
Thank you. All right, final comment.
Kristen Morse of 84 Harding Street. Again, I just want to reiterate what most people have said. It's a very small buildable lot. Really the return on investment would be little. There's, the destruction of trees and the impact on the wetlands would be negative to this town. A big reason why I moved here was because of all the nature that we have. I have 2 young kids. I know I live on a busy street, but we already have a corner that people are flying around. It's 25 miles an hour. I never see that happen. So I think just building on this lot really is not in favor of the town or what we stand for. So just please vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the article is Article 30. It requires a 2/3 majority. All in favor of Article 30, please say aye. Opposed? No. Unable to determine by a voice vote, we're going to do a show of hands. All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Okay, hands down. All opposed? I deem that the article does not pass. Okay, final article, Article 34, free cash. Page 75 of the warrant. I will recognize Warrant Committee Member Bob Sliney for what I believe is good news.
Move that Article 34 be dismissed.
Okay, this requires a majority vote. All in favor of dismissing Article 34, please say aye. All opposed? I deem that it carries. Before we adjourn for tonight, I just want to note that the SBC is hosting 4 public forums in May for community input. Wednesday, May 15th at Dale Street at 7. Sunday, May 19th at Dale at 4. May 29th at Town Hall at 11, and May 31st, Council on Aging at 10:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn today's town meeting? Second? All in favor? All opposed? Please go home. Thank you very much.